The first time I saw him, he was breaking a man's arm for just touching my shoulder. The second time I saw him, he was being hired as my shadow. I watched him from my father's study. He stood motionless in our foyer, a statue carved from wrath and granite. Mr. Thorne seems intense, I whispered to my father. He's the best, Alara, my father said, his voice heavy with weariness. The threats are getting more serious. Silas doesn't just provide security. He eliminates problems. A week later, my father was dead. The police called it a suspicious accident. And the problems he'd feared came knocking at my door. Silas moved me to a secluded, high-tech safe house hidden away in the mountains. Our existence became a silent ballet of vigilance and quiet tension. He was always there, a brooding presence, his storm-gray eyes missing absolutely nothing. He cooked my meals without a word. He constantly scanned the perimeter, and he slept on a couch right outside my bedroom door. He was my fortress, and I was his prisoner. I felt trapped not just by the threats outside, but by the man who was supposed to be protecting me. You hate this, I said one evening, breaking the heavy silence. I was watching him stare out the window into the relentless rain that had been falling for days. Babysitting a spoiled heiress. He didn't turn. I don't. His voice was a low rumble like distant thunder. Then why? My father's gone. The money can't possibly be worth this kind of isolation. Finally, he looked at me. The intensity in his gaze stole the breath from my lungs. It was like looking into the heart of a storm. It was never about the money, he said, and then he turned back to the window, leaving me with 1,000 unspoken questions. The silence between us grew after that, thick with unsaid words and a terrifying magnetic pull. I found myself inexplicably drawn to his quiet strength, to the controlled, deliberate way he moved like a predator at rest. I was afraid of him, yes, but I was even more afraid of the part of me that felt safest when he was near. It was a contradiction that lived in my chest, a constant, fluttering panic. The storm that had been brewing for days finally broke with violent, terrifying force. The lights flickered, then died, plunging the entire safe house into pitch darkness. Emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows. Then the alarms blared a piercing shriek that meant the security system had been compromised. We were no longer safe. Alara. His voice cut through the chaos, a blade of pure command. It was the loudest I'd ever heard him speak, and it spurred me into motion. I stumbled out of my room and into the main living area just as a window shattered, spraying glass across the floor. A dark figure slipped inside, a shadow against the stormy night. Before I could even scream, Silas was a blur of motion. The sounds were brutal, efficient, and sickeningly quick. A grunt of surprise from the intruder, a sickening crack of bone, and then silence. He stood over the intruder's unmoving body, his chest heaving. In the flashes of lightning that illuminated the room, I saw the primal fury on his face. He was every inch the weapon my father had hired him to be, a force of nature more terrifying than the storm outside. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, his hands gripping my arms, his touch firm but not painful. Are you hurt? The question was a raw, desperate growl, completely stripped of his usual control. I shook my head, my body trembling uncontrollably. The fear, the adrenaline, the sheer, terrifying reality of my life crashed down on me all at once. A sob broke from my throat, a sound of pure terror and relief. And that's when it happened. The carefully constructed walls around him, the cold facade he wore like armor, completely shattered. He pulled me into his arms, crushing me against his chest in a desperate embrace. I could feel the frantic, wild beat of his heart drumming against my ear. It was the most vulnerable, most human thing I had ever felt from him. Dio, Alara? He murmured into my hair, his voice breaking on my name. When I saw him come through that window, I thought I'd failed you too. The last word hung in the air between us. Too? I whispered against his shirt, my voice muffled by the fabric. He went completely still. For a long, tense moment, the only sounds were the rain lashing against the house and our own ragged breathing. Then he gently took my hand, his grip unyielding as if he feared I might vanish into the darkness. He led me to the couch and sat me down, never letting go. I had a sister, he began, his voice hollow, echoing with a pain that was decades old. Isabella, she was like you, kind, a light. Our family had enemies, powerful ones. I was supposed to be watching her that day. He swallowed hard, the memory of visible physical pain etched on his face. I was 17. I got distracted for just a moment. That's all it took. They took her. We never found her. The confession hung in the dark, sucking all the air from the room. His failure, his lifelong penance. Now I understood the source of his intensity, the reason for his constant vigilance. Your father, Silas continued, his eyes glistening in the dim emergency light, was the only one who didn't blame me for what happened. He saw that I blamed myself more than anyone ever could. He gave me a purpose, a way to channel my guilt. And when he asked me to protect you, it was my chance. My redemption. His hand came up to cut my cheek, and his touch was astonishingly gentle, a stark contrast to the violence I had just witnessed. His thumb traced a soft line along my jaw. But it's not duty anymore, Alara. It hasn't been for a long time. My heart hammered in my chest. What is it then? I breathed, my voice barely a whisper. He leaned in closer, his forehead resting against mine. The scent of rain and him filled my senses. You are the light I thought I'd extinguished forever, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. And I will burn the whole world to the ground before I let anyone take you from me. When his lips found mine in the darkness, it wasn't a kiss of comfort or reassurance. It was a claiming, a vow spoken without words. It was the forgiveness he could never grant himself and the salvation I did and even know I offered. It was the end of my life as a protected asset, a name on a contract. And it was the beginning of my life as his everything.